6 months after my daughter died, a stranger in a grocery store thanked me for being brave enough to share Lily's journey. I had never seen this woman before in my life. She pulled out her phone and showed me a website, my daughter's photo at the top, wearing a yellow hospital gown, a paper crown on her head. The page had raised $184,000. My sister had built it and never told me it existed. My name is Marissa Hale. I was 36, and I stood in that grocery store aisle realizing someone had turned the worst year of my life into a campaign I knew absolutely nothing about. Before I get into what I found on that website, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Lily was diagnosed with leukemia at 7. She named her IV pole Gregory. She rated hospital pudding on a 10-point scale. She hated being called brave. "I'm not choosing this, so it doesn't count," she told a nurse once. My sister Brooke was there through most of it, driving me to appointments, sitting with Lily during procedures. When Lily died, Brooke handled the funeral flowers because I couldn't choose between roses and sunflowers without feeling like I was betraying my own daughter. That history is exactly what made the website impossible to understand. It described Lily's fear of needles, the night she asked if death would hurt, the song I sang beside her bed, details I had only ever shared with Brooke in private messages at 3 in the morning. At the bottom, Brooke had written, "Before she passed, Lily made me promise that no family would feel alone the way we did." Lily never said that. She was 7. Her final conversations were about whether our cat would remember her. Stay with me, because what I found when I drove to the address listed for this family center turned my sister's betrayal into something far bigger than a lie between siblings. I called Brooke from my car. "I was going to tell you," she said, once everything was confirmed. A stranger had just shown me my daughter's medical photos on a fundraising site, and my sister's first instinct was damage control, not an apology. When I asked where the money actually was, she said it was funding a family center near the children's hospital, meals, counseling, temporary rooms. "You should be proud," she told me. "Lily is helping people." "Lily is dead," I said. "And you used her without asking me." She cried, her most effective weapon, the one that always made everyone rush to comfort her before remembering why the conversation started. I asked her to take the site down. She refused. "The campaign is too far along. We have obligations." That word, "we," stayed with me the whole drive home. The next day, I found the address. It wasn't a family center. It was a narrow office above a beauty salon, run by a man named Graham who introduced himself as executive director and asked whether I'd become the foundation's public face. When I asked to see the bank statements and the building lease, his smile went careful. "We need to protect donor confidentiality." I wasn't asking for donor names. I was asking where the money went. The nonprofit had been incorporated 4 months after Lily died. Graham was president. Brooke was secretary and creative director. The third board member was Graham's brother. My own ex-husband Daniel had donated $15,000 from Lily's life insurance payout. Brooke had approached him directly after the funeral and let him assume I already knew. Among the donor materials was a letter supposedly signed by both of Lily's parents. My signature was on it. I had never signed anything. I hired an attorney, Celia Monroe, who warned me plainly. Challenging a charity named after my dead daughter would make me the villain in public. She was right, but I did it anyway. She sent cease and desist letters demanding a freeze on the funds. The platform suspended donations within 24 hours. Brooke called screaming, not crying this time, screaming. Payroll was due, she said. Vendors had contracts. "Payroll?" I asked. "Who exactly are you paying?" She went silent. The records arrived 3 days later. Of the $184,000 raised, more than $70,000 had already been spent. Brooke was drawing a $6,000 monthly salary as creative director. Graham took $8,000 as executive director. $22,000 went to branding and promotional videos. $14,000 went to a property consulting fee paid to a company owned by Graham's brother. No building had ever been leased. The glossy presentation showing a rooftop garden was built around a property option that had already expired weeks earlier. At a family meeting, my mother begged for a private solution. "Brooke made mistakes," she said, "but her heart was in the right place." I asked whether paying herself $6,000 a month off my daughter's death counted as a mistake. Brooke snapped that I resented her for turning pain into purpose while I'd done nothing. The room went silent. My father whispered her name in warning. I was almost grateful she said it, because until that exact second, part of me still wanted to believe grief had simply clouded her judgment. Now here's something I'd genuinely like your opinion on in the comments. If a family member used your child's story to raise money without asking, would you be able to forgive them if they eventually apologized? Or does using a grieving parent's silence as permission cross a line that no apology can undo? I placed Lily's actual hospital journal on the table, her drawings, her jokes, nothing resembling a final wish, no promise to Brooke, nothing. You didn't continue her wish, I told my sister. You created one because it made people give you money. The state attorney general opened an investigation. The platform refunded what remained. Graham vanished from public view. His brother's company dissolved. Brooke resigned before there was even a board left to remove her, and eventually signed a settlement barring her from managing charitable funds for years, agreeing to repay part of her salary. The public reaction was exactly what Celia predicted. Some called me heartless for destroying a center that could have helped children. The message that hurt most came from a mother whose son was still in treatment. She'd promised him they'd stay at Lily's Light when it opened, and now didn't know how to explain that it never really existed. I cried over that message longer than I cried over any insult aimed at me. A few months later, my ex-husband and I quietly created a small scholarship through the hospital's existing family support program. No photos of Lily, no invented final wish, just practical help. Parking, groceries, hotel nights for parents whose kids were in treatment. We named it the Yellow Crown Fund, after the paper crowns Lily used to make for every child on her floor. The hospital manages the money. We get annual reports, not salaries. Brooke and I didn't speak for nearly a year. When she finally wrote, there were no excuses left, just an admission that grief had made her desperate to stay important in Lily's story, that donor attention had felt like proof she mattered. I told myself you would understand later, she wrote. What I meant was that I expected you to forgive me after I got what I wanted. I appreciated the honesty. I wasn't ready to rebuild anything from it. A good cause doesn't erase the harm done to create it. Grief is not public property. A child's life is not raw material for someone else's redemption story, and a mother's silence after unbearable loss is never permission. If you believe people deserve ownership of their own stories, subscribe to Unheard Drama Stories, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and where you personally think the line is between honoring someone and using them.